If not, I will open up the public hearing, and if you can queue up in the back by the camera, that'll help us get through these. I have quite a few cards. I have Kevin McClelland, followed by Frank Giffey, followed by Patricia Salcedo.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council members.
Good evening.
My name is Kevin McClellan. I'm here on behalf of the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce. We did submit a letter late. I've got a copy if you don't have one in your packet, but I want to highlight some of the items that we mentioned. We'd like to inform you that the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce is in opposition of this proposal for this new process. While the revised proposal is significantly better than the June version, we remain concerned with the proposal's approach. The Chamber believes strongly that the current process has served Cupertino well and should be retained. The current process, whereby the City determines appropriate citywide allocations of office, retail, and hotel space for appropriate review of projects that are consistent with a robust community planning process. Back in November, the prior City Council voted to allocate 550,000 square feet of new office space, 1,000 hotel rooms, in addition to maintaining the existing allocation for major corporations. While the vote was later nullified due to a scheduling error, the current Council subsequently indicated majority support for similar allocations in December during a straw vote. We recommend the City Council officially adopt those new allocations. A couple of issues around the whole beauty contest to extract the maximum community benefits actually has several pitfalls. 1 or 2 general plan amendments a year does not provide sufficient flexibility. Cupertino could essentially eliminate from considering exciting but time-sensitive development opportunities. If a new company is looking to expand in Silicon Valley, they are unlikely to consider Cupertino if it means waiting 6 months to a year before the city staff can spend time on their project. Likewise, development opportunities arise all the time as tenants leave or land becomes available. In many cases, the city's timing for development decisions may make pursuing some opportunities cost prohibitive. And contrary to making the process easier, lumping all the projects together for simultaneous consideration is likely to increase community negative reaction to growth. As we have witnessed over the past year, when the public is presented with multiple development proposals at the same time, there is a tendency to revert to a no-growth posture. Considering projects one at a time allows individual projects to stand on their own merits within the broader general plan goals set by the community. Also, Cupertino residents have consistently expressed concerns with community benefits as a driving factor for development decisions. The business community shares those concerns. One of the likely outcomes of creating a beauty contest system would be to discourage smaller landowners from pursuing projects within the city. They would not be able to compete with the larger developments. The result would be fewer diverse developments occurring in the city. We really hope that you would oppose this and stick with the plan that's been working for
Thank you, Mr. McClellan.
Thank you.
Frank Giffey, followed by Patricia Salcedo, and after Patricia will be Kathy Helgerson.
Good evening. Procedures are usually developed to facilitate projects and make sure that they get done more efficiently, and also to catch any pitfalls that could lie in there that if you don't do it really systematically, you might not catch. And one thing that I've noticed from some comments is that I heard that growth is inevitable and it can't be controlled. I don't believe that that's necessarily the truth. I believe that that growth is possible to control, and that the procedures that you use for developing growth due to the general plan amendment are controlled by City Council in terms of approval and disapproval. So I think that if there is a procedure that's developed for this, it must be developed very carefully and to catch any problems that might occur. One of the things that could occur is that sustainability. I saw The slides went awful fast, so I missed a lot of it. I'm sorry. So I might be treading on ground that has already been covered. But I did see the word sustainability as some of the things that you're checking for. And I'm not sure what the sustainability means. Is it environmental sustainability or is it growth sustainability? So since this is all about growth, I'm going to assume that it's really growth sustainability. And what that means is that as the community grows, it grows in such a manner that it can continue to grow. And what I'm most concerned about is our infrastructure is not able to keep up with some of the growth elements that occur. One of the growth elements that occurs, which is in my mind very significant, is traffic. There are going to be a lot of businesses established because of large developments, especially Valco, where it's speculated that 2 million square feet of office space is going to be developed and some 800 housing units, et cetera. And this is all going to create traffic, in addition to traffic that already exists or will exist very soon that was outside the scope of the general amendment, such as Apple, which has 8,000 cars. So my best estimate is we're going to have anywhere from 15 to 20,000 cars in that vicinity near Apple and Valco and those areas where I don't think the infrastructure has been designed to handle it. And if there's plans for handling that infrastructure, I haven't heard about them. It seems like we should mitigate that, handle, and have a plan for mitigation of the infrastructures before we partake of the developments. And I think that that should be part of the procedure in this. Another thing that I've heard is that there are community benefits, and I heard a new word called, or a phrase called, voluntary community amenities, which are going to be part of the procedure. And I might have missed this. It might not be, or it might be so, but these are rumors I heard. And I hope that that if these procedures are developed to help, I think that, excuse me, getting back to it, the voluntary community amenities should have the purpose of mitigating problems that are created by developments. And I hope that that's kept in mind when you do such things, is that whenever a voluntary community amenity is made, that its object is to mitigate problems that are caused by that development. Thank you.
Can I ask Frank a question?
Sure.
Frank, how did you come up with 8,000 cars from Apple's campus?
Well, I guess I heard about that.
You just heard of it? You did not?
Yes, I heard about that, and I assumed that, and I heard from several sources, so I assumed that that was something that Apple had estimated from their 13 or 14,000 employees, that they're going to end up with about 8,000 cars, and the rest are going to transport by buses and other transportation modes.
Okay. Second question is, when you talk about sustainability in growth and environment, did you see any conflict in between those two? Sustainability.
Say that again?
Do you see?
Oh, come on, don't make him do it.
My hearing's also kind of bad, so.
Do you see the conflict between the growth and the environment regarding the sustainability?
Oh, yes, definitely. If the community grows faster than infrastructure can handle, and then we try to spill out into open areas which were, otherwise preserved to not have growth in them because we haven't really dealt with it properly, then that might impact the green, the natural environment. I was directing this more towards sustainability of growth. That is, growth should be designed so that growth can continue, not be saturated with some factors such as traffic or whatever, schools, traffic. There are a whole bunch of things that could be saturated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Patricia Salcedo, followed by Kathy Helgerson. After Kathy, we'll have Jennifer Griffin.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'm Pat Salcedo, representing BIA Bay Area. and I'd like to make just a few comments generally about the general plan process you're reviewing. You know, per the Bay Area Council, since the adoption of Plan Bay Area, the Bay Area has produced over 456,000 jobs, 3 times the original target of Plan Bay Area. And the Bay Area has produced about 72,000 housing units, only about 70% of that original target of housing units in Plan Bay Area. So if we were to take 3 times the housing units of the targeted number, we currently are behind over 200,000 dwelling units in the Bay Area for housing, comparable to the number of jobs we have produced. And for the city of Cupertino, the Department of HCD with the state of California has currently in their record 11% or only 38 of Cupertino's targeted very low-income RHNA housing units have been built. 14% or only 31 of the targeted low-income housing RHNA units have been built, and 24% or only 58 of its targeted moderate RHNA housing units have been built in Cupertino. And this is between 2007 and April of this year. Generally speaking, as you look to new policies to manage the city's general plan process, adopting criteria that drives competition, i.e. sweeteners, financial contributions, amenities, will only continue to drive up the cost of housing, continuing to push the Silicon Valley region further and further out of affordability for the majority of the working people of this community. Additionally, to de facto blanket Cupertino with citywide development agreement requirements, including term sheets memorializing supposedly voluntary community benefits, is an abuse of the general plan process. The general plan is a land plan. In conclusion, as a city that currently is significantly adding to the growth of jobs, which is a good thing, your first priority in your general plan process should be to facilitate planning, then the eventual entitling and construction of adequate housing in order to house the people that currently work in your city, as well as the future workers in your city. Otherwise, we are going to see the demise of Silicon Valley as we know it today. Thank you.
Patricia, may I ask you a
Yes.
question?
Certainly.
Since we have such an imbalance, would you suggest that we therefore stop building more office until we correct the imbalance?
Absolutely not. We need the jobs, but we also need to provide for the housing. Mixed-use development is the way to go in the future. You're all very familiar with it, but we need to allow the density. We need to allow the units, and we need to allow processes to move so that housing can be built in an adequate time frame, commensurate as jobs keep coming into your community.
And you're
We're not
saying-
opposed to jobs.
Are you opposed to developers who are receiving a just reward for building in the city, contributing to the infrastructure that it takes to go along with that growth, or not?
I think as is currently and has been for many years, when anyone wants to build in a city, whether it's Cupertino, Sunnyvale, San Jose, San Francisco, your impacts have to be addressed in that development. City staffs across the board require mitigation of impacts. Those developers, property owners absolutely should build and mitigate any impacts that they create. They already do. It's required by your staff.
So just to encapsulate, you're against the proposal in front of the dais.
I think the proposal in front of you will take more time. It is, for all that's being said, there's a great emphasis on community benefits, community amenities. They need to take care of any impacts their project is creating. But you're creating, who's the beauty contest? Who's offering the biggest, the most, the best package with the biggest bow? All of that costs money. So at the end of the day, if there's housing included and you need housing, housing is expensive to build. People will want to continue creating jobs and not housing because they're not going to they won't have the same return. So we need to find a way to allow housing to proceed, to provide density in housing so that we can allow the jobs to continue. You've already got many jobs under construction, but you need to create housing to compensate for the people that are clogging the roads to get to those jobs.
Okay, thanks. But you're against the proposal that's in front of us?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Patricia, can I ask?
Yes.
Here's your question.
Yes, please.
You don't think a competition is good? So you pretty much tell us that competition is bad here.
Competition, a general plan is to be a land plan of what the city thinks that piece of property should develop as. When you get into competition, you're getting people to try and I'll throw in this and I'll throw in that, and ultimately it's going to cost more money. If you're going to have a mixed-use development that includes housing, at the end of the day, whether it's rental or for sale, that unit is going to cost more as it goes on the market. So it will be more expensive to rent or more expensive to buy. And that drives out the middle-class working community in Silicon Valley.
But the proposed project proposal, the proposed amendment will make it the public have opportunity to give the input earlier. This is the complaint we got from the community, that we don't get enough input.
I don't think anybody is arguing about input. I don't know, developers welcome community input. There's community meetings, there's processes all over the valley that require that. When we talk community benefits, if it is to mitigate impacts, that's one thing. If it's to say who's going to offer us the biggest package of surprises, that's something else.
So you would maintain that every time we approved a project in the city in the last 5 years, all of the impacts have been mitigated? Really?
I would say that the impacts have been directed by your staff and your council members, whoever was sitting at that time.
Yeah,
It was what was needed to mitigate that project. I think the cumulative impact, as we know, is we've had a massive crush of jobs come into the area since about 2010, the end of the recession, for lack of a better word. And what we are seeing is this huge explosion of job growth. And we have not kept up with the housing to manage the job growth.
Okay.
And this is why we're busing people back and forth from San Francisco. They're out in the valley, driving into Silicon Valley. It's why just coming from San Jose to Cupertino, you sit in an hour of traffic. It's the jobs.
So you would say that we've mitigated all the traffic impacts of all the developments in Silicon Valley and the projects we've approved here?
I'm not going to say you have mitigated all the traffic impacts.
Thank you.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
A question for the staff based on the last speaker.
Sure.
I just want to understand, it's not just the community amenities that we are going to be evaluating in this process, correct? It's the project itself. You'll be evaluating a project in context with another project, 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. It's not just one portion, which is the community benefits or amenities that they may or may not offer.
That's right. You're going to be looking at several criteria, including, resources, the project itself, and the council might decide that a project might provide a lot of amenities, but it's too big for the city and they don't want it to be processed. So yes, all we're going to bring to you is information. The decision is going to be made by the council about which projects go through the gate.
And when in this process can the community give their input?
At the meeting and before the meeting, at which the council makes a decision whether or not projects can proceed.
And this is irrespective of whether the word amenities is in any way discussed in that meeting. The community gets to have their input on all parts of the project.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And you had a slide up there before, you could bring that up again.
So we're in the middle of the public hearing.
Thank
And
you.
I think we probably ought to continue unless somebody has something really burning. Is that okay?
Sure.
I have Kathy Helgerson, followed by Jennifer Griffin, followed by John Willie.
Okay, well, I'm confused. All right. I looked at the draft for 15078, which was never put up, by the way, on the screen. And I'm very concerned about what it says here. And first of all, I'd like to say I don't believe that 4 times a year going over amendments for building projects that is rapid growth, and I don't think that's what we want. But I'd like people to look at this draft, which I guess you're going to have to change, which I don't know how you're going to do it, but I would like to read something here. Whereas California Government Code Section 65358A provides that if it is deemed it is to be in the public interest, the legislative body may amend all or part of an adopted general plan. An amendment to the general plan shall be initiated in the manner specified by the legislative body. And whereas each mandatory element of the city general plan may be amended no more than 4 times during any calendar year and subject to the limitation, an amendment may be made at any time as determined by the legislative body. Government Code 65358B. Okay, well, I'm very concerned that the city municipal code does not address the timing or initiation of the general plan amendments. Public should be involved continually. I don't like the fact that there are community benefits. There has to be some sort of regulation determining these benefits. You're going to have to think of some way to figure this one out, because it's a bribe process, and but the problem is that every city has this. It's been going on for, who knows, decades. So how do you resolve that? Well, you'll have to figure that out. That's what we elected you for. It also states, whereas the procedures included, among other things, notice provisions to ensure the public has an opportunity to comment. This is not going on and happening, as we've all heard from Better Cupertino. Evaluation criteria to ensure general plan amendments that move through the application process are in the public interest, they're not, and meet the city's goals for development, including provision of community amenities. And 3, requirements for requesting preliminary review of proposal general plan amendments. None of these things are happening. These revisions are subject to the general manager and the city attorney, who will decide many of the things that are in the general plan amendment procedure. I am not happy about this. I'm very disturbed. Are you going to change this form? Because that's what we're all here for. We're all here to discuss this, which was never brought up on the screen. It was, the staff report didn't have this in there. It's in, if you look in
Thank you.
A and E, you'll see some of the forms that are going to be used.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Jennifer
you didn't answer anything.
Griffin, followed by John Willie.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council and diligent staff. I commend the staff for coming up with some of the most complicated flow charts I've ever seen, but we know you guys are great. That's why you're here. More and more from what I've seen recently and tonight, I really am totally against community benefits. I see, you know, there are different ways that they can be implemented, but having them as even a subject of discussion in Cupertino just makes my blood curl. I mean, that doesn't right. I don't even want them to be, if they're going to be discussed, they should be project by project. They're not a blanket. It's like what the previous speaker said. I mean, I just don't want them in Cupertino. I don't want them as part of our life in Cupertino. The developers can propose things, but I don't want it to be push and pull, set in stone for life in Cupertino. I'm going to say from the standpoint that I think we need to take a big step backwards. We're getting into an area that is completely too complicated, too mechanized. We've got flowcharts of we're going to do this and we're going to submit. I just think it's too complicated. I would like to go back 2 years before we even got into the huge general plan amendment with the 7 stakeholders. I'd like to go back before we even had the proposed GPA of the 800 million square feet. The reason why we started into this huge Goliath of the GPA, which wound up piled up with the housing element. We're just like Goliath rolling along, it's going to fall. And I think now one of the standpoints is that there are no more large pieces of property in Cupertino to engineer. Valco, okay, what can you say about Valco? We have some current plans there. We haven't gone down that road. That could be approved quickly. It could take months, even years. Okay, so I won't even go there. Main Street, Apple II, IHOP for us at the East End, they are coming into fruition after many, many months and years of work. They're stable. We're getting our trees back. I can actually drive down Wolf Road now and get to Homestead, and it's gorgeous what we're seeing. But I think our battle in the future is going to be vertical. And I don't think we have any other huge pieces of land that we're going to be having to super engineer like we did with Main Street and with Apple II, et cetera, et cetera. So I think in this standpoint, I would like to go back to the way it was before we got into this huge GPA mess. And I know everyone's worked hard on it, but I would like to go back. Let's take a step back. And I think it's going to be, it worked fine before. I don't even know how we got down this road. So let's go backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. John Willie, followed by Yu Ying, and after that, Zhao and Wang.
Oh, good evening again. This is the reason that I had come tonight. So, on the surface, this proposal, trying to bundle things together, really strikes me the wrong way. I think every project needs to have to stand on its own and not be combined and confused. Make sure that we all really understand what this particular project is, not combined with other stuff, and make sure it gets a very critical and honest review. And combining them, I don't see that. But then I read in there what I was seeing about community benefits, and now that I've heard everybody else kind of say, wow, they also saw it in there, I think we need to really talk about community benefits and the abuse, the clear abuse. At Main Street, these two office buildings were supposed to have retail in it, and they got an extra 60,000 square feet, 30,000 for each building, and the community benefit was only 1,600 square feet of retail. That's all, 1,600. He got 30,000, we got 1,600. But then if you read the second page of what I handed you, that's the Sand Hill letter that says no retail for Cupertino, none, zero. It's only for the residents or the tenants of the building. The parking structure should have been 45 feet. He was allowed to go to 60 feet by providing retail. There's no retail in that parking structure. They pushed up a retail building against it and said it qualifies to go to 60 feet. Believe it or not, if you look at the image on the right, that is from the developer's documents. It's 9 floors. You know that that's taller than the parking structure at San Francisco International Airport? There's no retail in this. Oops, something happened there. For the hotel, he got an extra 26,000 square feet, and he provided a restaurant inside the hotel. When's the last time you took your family out to eat and you went to a hotel? It's only going to be for the guests at the hotel. That's not a community benefit for us residents. 26,000 square feet, 48,000 square feet, 60,000 square feet, and add up the community benefit to us. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we have Yu Ying, followed by Xiaowen Wang, and then Liangfang Chao.
Good evening. Today I'm here to learn what the community benefits will be and the GP process. And what the staff has proposed is just, from my point of view, is a front-end application process. It doesn't explain what the back-end operation will be. And it doesn't explain what exactly is the community benefits or community amendments required by the developer. Benefits, from its word, it means to me, I need to earn money, not to spend more money. It brings benefits, not to introduce more tax or more debts to the city. That's called benefits. And are we having that? Community benefits has give the developer opportunities to propose new constructions or whatever, but those has to have a boundary. What's the boundary of the city for constructions? That's general plan. That's the law. That's the Bible. We have to follow that. That's simple. Finally, what if the developer didn't follow its plan? They changed the plan. What if he cannot commit the benefits he promised at the beginning of the plan? Does he pay anything? When the Main Street, the senior housing disappeared, what does we gain for the city? When the park in the Main Street reduced, what do we gain in the city? If there is no penalty, no fine, and no law to enforce the community benefits, then it will be abused. There's no doubt about it. So that's my points about the community benefits. Hope you will listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Xiaowen Wang. Please hold your applause. Xiaowen Wang, followed by Liangfang Chao. And then Peggy Griffin thereafter.
Good evening, mayors and city councils. So I guess today I'm going to talk about, since today's topic in this one? This one. Since today's topic seems to center on how often we do this thing, right? Once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year. And also, I think today's topic majorly concerned about how often we do it is workload. What is the staff's workload? Then I have to ask how we do it. That's the process itself determines staff's workload. Actually, I appreciate City hired this consultant, gave us details on how other cities do it. If you read the white paper, this development management report provided by 2 consultants, I have to stress that, it's all about this. The whole report is about this. I copied the figure 1, figure 2 of this report. It's about how San Diego do it. For the community benefit, they have a very detailed point system. And throughout this whole report, actually, all the cities studied in this report have this system to evaluate how the developer provide their community benefit, how to quantify them, and at what point they can ask for the amendment for a height increase or whatever. So I have to ask, where is our evaluation system? Because we have to know that you can see if this system becomes more complicated, obviously you have more work for the staff. We don't know what is this system, how do we evaluate how much work the staff going to do? And that related directly to the problem we have today, how often we do it. So I don't know how we do that without this data point. And then again, a lot of speakers here also expressed a concern about the enforcement. How do we ensure the developer delivers? Actually, I did a Google search on community benefit agreement. You got a list of papers, research, academic papers on this topic. So this is not just our concern. It's actually a real problem. So I quoted this paper from this, the author has been involved in negotiate quite some community benefit agreement. I want to read the conclusion of this report. I think it summarizes it the best. The widespread national interest in CBAs and related tools indicate that the issue addressed in this article will be relevant for some time. Misuse of the CBA terminology and the concept is a serious danger because of real-world consequences involved.
Thank you.
I hope you all read it. I think that's a very good excerpt, and I'm sorry that I cannot print out for you because this thing, you can only read it online for free. You have to pay. But
Liang Fang Chow, followed by Peggy Griffin. And after Peggy, it's Darrell Lum.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. Let's face it, general plan is the constitution of our city. Any project that follow all the rules in the general plan, they don't need any GPA. If you build within the height limit, within the density, within the setback, or in all the rules, you don't need GPA. This whole process encourages rule breakers. You encourage people to break rules 3 times, for 2 times, how many times a year? You encourage rule breakers, and you are saying you can build higher, you can build more office. There is no limit on the height. There is no limit on the office location. There is no limit on the amount of density you can pile up on a property. And don't tell us developers can choose not to provide benefit. If they are breaking a rule, of course you are going to make them provide benefit. But how are you going to regulate the benefit? There is no process. There is no rule. The staff studied for months on so many different regulations other cities use, but you decide to throw all of them in the garbage. And this resolution provides no rule. No, it will open the door for abuses. Just like we already have community benefits as ground floor component, and it has been abused so many times. Not only that, this whole community benefits term has been hidden from the residents. Ever since the general plan in 2014, it's hidden inside the general plan. It was not even on the agenda. And today, is there any mention of community benefits or voluntary community amenities on the agenda? Nothing. You guys intentionally hid it inside the agenda. And throughout the past few months, from February to March to April, the residents emailed the city again and again. Do we have more information on community benefits? What's your research on community benefits? Staff provide us nothing. We request a workshop, nothing. However, throughout this whole process, the staff has attended weekly community benefit meetings with developers and 2 of the council members. The residents have been shut out of the process. You are saying that you would use developer agreement as it will be a binding agreement. That would be a joke. Main Street had a developer agreement approved in 2009, and it has been modified again, approved by the council over and over again. Now it's totally different.
Thank you. Thank you.
Residents shouldn't be separated from council and staff and the developer.
I'm sorry, your time's up. Peggy Griffin, followed by Darrell Lum, and then Jason Lundgaard.
Mayor Sinks, Vice Mayor Chang, City Council, and staff. When policies are vague and nonspecific, the developers and their attorneys will exploit them to their advantage. And these policies have been abused again and again to profit the developers at the expense of the residents. The ground floor retail component that lots of people have talked about in exchange for 15 feet in height, and the policy in the 2020 general plan has been badly abused as a community benefit. Retail, in exchange for additional height, adds parking, adds everything else, so it's just not that. And community benefits need to be specific. I am completely against them. It calls for abuse. It clouds the judgment. The project needs to stand on its own. You need to look at under the covers and let each project stand on their own. Let them mitigate their problems. And if they don't, let them reduce it so that the problem isn't as bad. And in your proposal, our old GPA or old general plan, there's no definition of retail. You've known this for a long time, and yet it's never been defined. The exchange, retail for height, it's never been defined what the proper exchange has been. Things have to be explicit. In this process that you've got in front of you, it says substantially similar. What does that mean? How exactly should they be the same? It's not defined. Anyway, so I think that community benefits leads itself for abuse, and that each project should stand on their own so that the judgment isn't clouded. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell Lum. And following that, Jason Lundgaard. Jason, followed by Stephen Scharf.
My name is Darrell Lum, and good evening. Most of the points that I'm going to cover have already been discussed. Put this on. And I'm going to deal mainly with the procedures for processing of the general plan amendment and applications. On item number 2, procedure, I would probably, I think CCC has gone through this and would recommend that you delete item number 2E, number 3, which is the list of voluntary community amenities as defined in section 3. And I'll go through why we feel that way. Presently, an applicant can request a general plan amendment for his or her project if the project is limited by the general plan. I think at this point you could have public input, and it seems to be that the public input is the important item here. We would also ask that you strike out number 3, voluntary community amenities, which are basically community benefits, which are basically public benefits, but there has been no public input regarding the amenities. And we would definitely discourage in lieu fees. I think that's probably not a real, is a very sensitive issue. So, and also on number 4, preliminary review requirements, we would add number F, sufficient public noticing to allow public comment. Nowhere in this procedure does it say that there should be public comment, and it doesn't allow enough time. In many cases, we get notices about 4 days before a meeting, and that's not sufficient time for us to even make a comment. Thank you.
Can you just go over your list again, very briefly? We still got a little time left tonight.
We would delete number 2E, number 3. We would delete number 3, which is voluntary community amenities, and we would add sufficient public noticing to allow adequate public comment.
Thanks, got it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jason Lundgaard, followed by Stephen Scharf.
Hello, I'm Jason Lundgaard with Apple Inc. I'd like to encourage the council to stick with the existing process. This process served the community well and has allowed projects to kind of stand or fall on their own merits, and I think that's been a benefit. As such, I'd also recommend that you relook at the allocations that the previous council in November approved before that meeting was vacated due to a scheduling issue, as well as the straw vote that this council took in December, which was adding a modest amount of office space to the general plan, as well as maintaining the existing allocation for major corporate users, and then also considering a modest increase in hotel. And with that, I'd also, if you do go down the route of this kind of gatekeeping beauty contest, I do have a question actually for the city attorney. of how you envision handling potential conflicts of interest. You know, in the current system, it's actually pretty clear how that works. If there happens to be a conflict between, you know, a council member and a given developer, they recuse themselves. It's not clear if you bundle 5, 6, 7 projects together and one of those projects may have a conflict with a given council member, how that would sort itself out. Do they need to recuse themselves from the entire process? Because any decision at the end of the day that they make will either, you know, include or not include that one project where they might have a conflict, or is there going to be some sort of other process to manage that, and how does this all work if there's potentially not a tie-breaking vote? Thank you.
And what's your position on whether that recusal should take place as to the entire process?
I don't have a position on that, but, you know, I think, you know, we need to know if there's a scenario that is potentially foreseeable, we need to have thought through what that is going to be and make sure that it's legal.
Okay, thank you.
So noted. So I'm collecting questions, and I'm going to have staff respond to them as best I can before we move on to council comment. Okay, we have Stephen Scharf, followed by Mark Tersini.
Hi. First, I would like to correct the spokesperson from Bay Area Council, because as other people have mentioned, including up on the dais, the housing developers are definitely not mitigating the effect of their developments. The reason we have zoning is because we need a balance of land uses, not the land use that might be the most profitable for the developer. In fact, since the state doesn't allow cities to consider the school impact when they're improving housing projects, about the only way we have to protect our schools is to prevent the rezoning of commercial land for housing. Unfortunately, it looks like with Valco, it's going to be another referendum similar to D&E to stop them, if we can. Now, Palo Alto had the right idea. There was no way to build enough housing to offset office space, so they stopped approving more office space. And also another correction, the reason Apple employees like to live in San Francisco is not because housing in Cupertino is so expensive, because rents in San Francisco are even more. It's because they want to live in San Francisco, an urban environment where the sidewalks aren't rolled up at 9 o'clock at night. Now, voluntary community amenities. I think this is the first time I've ever agreed with the Chamber of Commerce. The application for a GPA should stand on its own merits without the city trying to extort so-called voluntary benefits and without the developers feeling compelled to essentially offer bribes to get their GPA approved over another developer's GPA. A GPA application should stand on its own. And this type of extortion is bad for the developer, the city, the residents, and poorer GPAs could be approved just because a wealthier developer offers more goodies. And developers routinely offer benefits and then they don't follow through. We see Sandhill being fined $500 a day from the city of Palo Alto, and somehow I think $500 a day is not going to bankrupt Sandhill Properties. And Palo Alto will never get the amenity that they were promised. So I urge the council not to include the voluntary community amenities in this resolution. Thanks.
Can I ask Steve a question?
Okay.
So Steve, you were suggesting, are you implying that we should make a Cupertino like a San Francisco more urbanization so we can attract Apple's employees to stay in Cupertino?
If you could do that, I'd like it, but I don't think you're going to be able to do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Mark Tersini, followed by Poonam Pandey, assuming you're here to speak on this agenda item. I see Valco redevelopment, which is really on the agenda tonight. So, and then Lisa Warren.
Good afternoon, or good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor.
Good evening,
and,
Mark.
Members of the council, appreciate your time this evening to discuss this process. For those that don't know me, I am Mark Tersini, and the company is KT Urban. KT Urban was founded in Cupertino approximately 28 years ago. less than an eighth of a mile west of the Oak Shopping Center. Over the course of our tenure in Cupertino, my brother and I have frequented the Oaks Shopping Center, and it has deteriorated over the last 10 years, I would say, and is in desperate need of revitalization. We acquired the property, and we hope to and desire to revitalize the shopping center as a mixed-use project, and will be requesting a general plan amendment. That general plan amendment will address some of the issues that have been brought up this evening, and we believe that the request will be modest amendments to allow for a successful mixed-use project, and that's what we're looking to provide for the community. Just recently, we went out to the community and held a number of meetings, and that is for us, it gave us an opportunity, our design team, an opportunity to share our vision of the project and the repurposing of the property, and also to solicit input from the community regarding the safety in and around the shopping center to date, the concern for potential impacts to the schools. And we wanted to hear those comments firsthand. It's nothing new to go out to the community, but this is prior to any formal application with the City of Cupertino staff, and we intend to file a formal application when the time is appropriate. And that's what we're here tonight, is to understand what is that appropriate time to file for a general plan amendment. With that, we would hope that the council will look at our proposal and provide a favorable consideration to actually be allowed in through the process, so then we can really engage with staff on what our intended plans are with respect to this mixed-use project. So I thank you for your time this evening. I did wanted to just to let the council know that we're ready to move forward as a property owner in Cupertino.
So you talked about something that's not really on the agenda. Do you have a comment to the agenda item, sir?
No, actually, I don't have a comment on that. The agenda, the item in front of the council this evening is one for the council to deliberate on, and we'll abide by whatever the council's discretion is this evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Got
you.
it. Mm-hmm. Okay, Poonam Pandey, do you want to speak on Valco, or do you want to speak on this GPA process?
I wanted to talk on the redevelopment.
What you can speak about is the GPA process,
Yeah.
and the process we're considering, so that's open.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to do?
I think so.
Great.
So basically,
Okay.
I came in late, so I think I couldn't go through your entire agenda. So I just basically wanted to put out a couple of points, which I think a lot of residents have already put forward, that with the entire mixed-use development that's going to be happening, that is planned and pictured, and we saw the beautiful photo and everything, has there been any planning in terms of the road infrastructure? Because currently, already we have a lot of traffic around Wolf and 280 and everything, with the current Apple employees and the current, school-going traffic, every kind of traffic. So we do have a lot of traffic around there. So with the entire increased development, is there a plan going forward? Is there something already planned out about the road infrastructure? And the other thing would be the school infrastructure, that I understood that there was a provision for an additional school, but from what I read and what I saw was, seeing on the plan and everything, it's a very small area, and how would it accommodate so many more students and also give open space and everything else that should be there in the school? I have one more point to say, that with the increased number of residents, are we also considering that, the ratio of people versus people with the open living or open space that every city should have? Are we going to be following, adhering to that or not? So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. If anybody else wants to speak on this agenda item, please come up in the next minute. I have one more card here from Lisa Warren. I'm sorry?